Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on PC with Ryujinx, and Ryujinx just got a real nice update. So as of version 1.1.1084, Ryujinx has migrated to .NET 8. If you've updated Ryujinx recently and noticed things are running a little bit better, it's because they probably are. This update improves performance slightly on almost every game. Moving on, and we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Citra, and we talked about Citra yesterday, and I'm talking about it again today. I've got a minor correction over something I said yesterday. So to quickly recap here, yesterday we talked about the Android UI Overhaul Part 1 hitting the nightly build, where UI stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or User Interface. And then we talked about UI Overhaul Part 2 currently in development. Well, I didn't know this, but it's already hit the canary build. So hat tip to Sleeping Snake 2097 and YNXENIX 2708 for pointing this one out. So to pick up the latest canary build of Citra, head to citra-emu.org and click on download, and then click on manual download. And then scroll down to canary build and pick it up for your platform of choice. The canary build of Citra is a little bit more experimental than the nightly build. Next up here, we're talking about Nintendo DS emulation on Android with Melon DS and also Nintendo DS Overlay. Nintendo DS Overlay just released on GitHub, and it's an overlay for Melon DS. At the time of filming, version 1 is the latest update, and it's the only update, and it's not very big at all, only 76.5 kilobytes. If you are curious about this one, it's 100% free and I think open source. I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Moving on, and we're quickly hopping over to Reddit, specifically Reddit emulation on Android, and there's a very interesting post titled Best NES ROM Hacks, updated for 2023. If you're into ROM hacks, if you're into the NES, you may want to check out this thread. So as always, I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Each individual ROM hack has its own write-up and screenshot. If you are into these things, let me know your thoughts about these ROM hacks in the comments below. And if there's a ROM hack you think is better, let me know in the comments below. Moving on, and we're still on Reddit here and hopping over to Reddit emulation on Android. And there's a very interesting post. It says, according to leaks, the Snapdragon 7 Gen 3 will be slower than the 7 Plus Gen 2. And this person is recommending to get your 7 Plus Gen 2 while you still can. If we take a look at the information here, the big difference between the two is the GPU. On the 7 Gen 3, you've got the Adreno 720, and on the 7 Plus Gen 2, you have the Adreno 725. Now, GPU naming conventions aside, even if you take a look at the CPU clocks here, the 7 Gen 3 is clocked lower than the 7 Plus Gen 2. I'm not quite sure on what's going on here, and I'm very curious to see performance tests once the Gen 3 is released. Next up, we're talking about AYANEO, and AYANEO just dropped a video for the AYANEO Flip DS. I am digging the dual screens, not necessarily the recessed joysticks, but I guess what are they going to do considering the top flips down? Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. And speaking about joysticks, next up we're talking about Stubbs Nubbs. You may recognize the name Stubbs from the Retro Handhelds Discord community, or the website, or the Twitter account, or their YouTube page, or basically everywhere. And the same Stubbs here has created some joystick grips, some textured joystick grips for the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons. Interestingly enough, there's a few different models of Stubbs Nubbs, and if you're into textured grips, these may be up your alley. They come in a whole bunch of different colors here. They start at $4, and you can get all three, the sampler for $10. I will be reviewing these in the future. Stubbs has sent some to the channel. And speaking about retro handhelds, next up we're talking about GarlicOS, and GarlicOS 2.0 Public Alpha just released. This is a public alpha, so it may not be perfect just yet. So for those who may be unaware, GarlicOS is a game-first, config-second retro game emulation system with a focus on cross-platform support. I'm currently using GarlicOS 1.4.9 on my RG35XX, and in version 2.0 and greater here, they're trying to make it as decoupled from the hardware as it can be, in the hopes of providing a somewhat identical experience across all supported platforms. Version 2.0 is currently supported with the RG405M, RG405V, and Retroid Pocket 2 Plus. And continuing to talk about gaming handhelds, next up we're talking about the Analogue Pocket. And Analogue has just unveiled a whole bunch of classic limited editions. They're for $250. They go on sale November 17th. And they start shipping on November 20th. Like all of Analogue's stuff, they're saying here that these are highly limited quantities. Absolutely no surprise. So if you have your heart set on a specific color, I'll just say good luck here. And speaking about stuff that hasn't released yet, next up we're talking about a board game, a Sonic board game. It's called Sonic Roll. They say here in this 1 to 4 player semi-cooperative board game, you take on the role of Sonic, Tails, Amy, or Knuckles. Very interesting, and one that I might actually pick up. I'm not really a board game person, but I might be. And continuing to talk about unreleased stuff, next up we're talking about the highly anticipated RetroTINK 4K. And we finally have a price here. The MSRP is $750. And they are beginning to take orders early December. If you're not familiar with the RetroTINK, at a high level here, it can be used to connect old retro gaming systems to modern TVs and make the picture look real nice. They are not cheap, but they do quite a bit. I mean, they're compatible with a whole bunch of different systems here, and this one will do outputs of 4K 60. Absolutely insane. I've still got a RetroTINK 2X Pro, and I'm quite happy with it. For a quick reference here, there's a big price difference between the upcoming 4K, the existing 5X Pro, and the existing 2X Pro. The 2X Pro, the one I have, is only $140. The 5X Pro is $325, but it does a heck of a lot, and a lot of people say it's worth it. And the RetroTINK 4K is blowing both out of the water. You can buy both for less than the cost of a 4K. But again, it's outputting at 4K 60. Next up here, we're quickly talking about the PS5. And the other week, we talked about Lightning Mods, who was able to get a game backup up and running on a hacked PS5. The game was Grand Theft Auto 3, the definitive edition. I'll drop a link to this tweet in the description below. Anyways, fast forward to now, and Echo Stretch was able to get Ghost of Tsushima up and running, a game backup of it, on a hacked PS5. I'll drop a link to this tweet in the description below. And speaking about hacks or mods, next up we're talking about The Witcher. And this announcement is better late than never here. They say they're thrilled to announce that they're working on a mod editor for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It will allow you to create your own experiences in the game by making something completely new or editing existing quests and content. They're planning on releasing it for free in 2024. Will this breathe new life into the game? I would argue absolutely yes. Yes, The Witcher came out a long time ago, but at the same time here, I'm glad the developers are supporting this. And speaking about developer support, last up here we're talking about Proton Experimental, and this is great news if you game on the Steam Deck or just Linux in general. With the latest version of Proton Experimental, and I'll drop a link to the changelog in the description below, Assassin's Creed Mirage and Kill Squad are now listed as playable. And on top of that, they fixed triple monitor handling in Project Cars 3 and 2. And games should be able to switch monitors in full screen mode on Cinnamon desktop environment again. And last up here, we're talking about the PlayStation Portal, and it appears that some people are not having the greatest experience using this device. This is not the case for everyone based on what I've seen here, but if your network is not great, the Portal might not be for you. So Nick says his download speed is 268 megabits per second. His upload is 383 megabits per second, which isn't too bad at all. However, I would argue this really isn't that important when you're streaming from the PS5 to the PlayStation Portal. I mean, I'm not defending the PlayStation Portal here, but Nick says the PS5 is not hardwired and defaults to using the 2.4 gigahertz network. I'm not saying that's going to cause issues with the PlayStation Portal, but at the same time, this is far from an ideal setup. On top of all of that, if you're looking at a PlayStation Portal, there are a number of things to consider here, like where you're going to be playing in relation to your PS5. Are you going to try to play from across the house? Is your PS5 locked in the basement where your router's upstairs? There are a ton of things to consider. I don't think everyone's network is going to be ideal for one of these devices, but if you've got one, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. I would argue I'm not the biggest fan of this device and I'm not the target for this device, but at the same time here, I think some people really like this. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.